So what you're about to see is really the genesis of taking this idea of Icarus, which was birthed in a thought experiment of what was going wrong with DayZ. And that idea sort of grew once we realized the technical solutions to the problems we found into the project as it is today. And really you'll get to see it grow from being just a couple of people with an idea through into 60 people, just really coming together to try and bring this idea to life. And really, I guess that core principle that you'll see is rallying around these pillars of what we thought was going to make a really good survival experience. We use those opinions to drive what we're going to try, and then the testing result is the forge of actually playing the game. As these things often are, it was planned to be much more, I guess, boring in terms of production and a simple task, but throwing in the mix of things like a global pandemic and all the problems that ensued really sort of ended up becoming a pretty interesting and at times difficult project. So one of our big challenges, and I think we experience this in DayZ, it comes down to the setting that you create for your survival game. And I definitely know a few people have scratched their head with why we chose a science fiction future, but at the same time you're building prehistoric stuff. And I think while at its core that makes sense to people to question, actually when you look at it deeper it makes a lot of sense why you do it. I read a lot of Peter F. Hamilton's Night's Dawn trilogy books, and in them he's dealing with the colonization of space and things like that. The colonists go down on the planet and use the in situ resources to build their habitats. This has even been postulated by like Elon Musk about how they'll build like Martian cave tunnels, and they'll use the rock there to make sort of these Martian cement bricks to build stuff. And it's quite a natural idea to use the resources around you to build stuff. So that really sort of started to create a process for us is how do we build this world? How do we build Icarus? We wanted to do a very alien world, but it was difficult for us to do that initially in such a way that became cohesive and made sense. And we really realized quite rapidly as we went through this iterative art process that what really worked for us was what was familiar to the player. So we realized we needed to start with this product initially that was very familiar to players, and then pull them through slowly to the more alien. And I think what you'll see is that art process flowing through, where we actually started with the more exotic side of it, because maybe that was the more fun, and then coalesced around what were the familiar themes we could pull through and save the more exotic stuff for later. And that was really a key theme, working with a really amazing concept art team to actually experiment and figure stuff out initially. And sometimes for us it was the more subtle that actually worked for us in terms of establishing that familiar context for the player, and not so much in-your-face bubblegum sci-fi that's more common in games like Destiny and stuff like that. So after we got the funding, which was given with raised eyebrows because we were proposing to stand up a team of up to 70 people very quickly. So we went out and hired a bunch of people who had a lot of awesome game credits, places like Groninger Games, EA Games, Blizzard, and basically assembled this really awesome team. We realized that very quickly we needed to develop a really rapid prototype of what we felt was the core to the survival experience, and something we felt was missed a bit, which was really thinking about those basic gathering mechanics of what you do in every survival game and trying to make those as satisfying as possible. So now we're calling the next milestone industrial simulator. The idea being to make gameplay problems. In a future update, we make the tools to solve them. Getting a feeling right in your survival game is super important. I'm definitely liking what I'm seeing on the screens here. How can we get forests, the different biomes look interesting and enticing while still providing survival experiences. We have our Vanguard team over here who are responsible for the actual game itself that we're going to publish, making sure the architecture is good, making sure performance is good, and we're all happy. we have a separate programmers working on prototypes, and they work outside of the project. I think we really all had a really unified vision towards that we all wanted to achieve the same thing, and we all felt it was important. And that, in a sense, made the task quite exciting and quite easy, which is how do we make, a really simple way of cutting down trees that could scale and that was fun. And we think that was really what was missing. If you look at a lot of the survival games out there, they were piling stuff on at the end, but we wanted to make that mechanic really satisfying. And that was important for us because our game is about sessionizing your survival experience, so you get to repeat it again and again and again. And so we really needed to make sure that foundational stuff was super important. When you're developing a game, it's like an essay. You can sort of start anywhere, starting with the hardest part. So we chose that initial sort of woodcutting simulator to work on initially, for that later part of 2019, because it just seemed the clearest in our mind to develop. And that gave us that sort of singular vision that we all agreed to work around, and made a lot of sense for us. And I think we had a lot of good results from it. That also allowed us to dip our feet into the technical side of how we wanted to build the game, which was another massive problem that we saw in the survival game market. It was reasonably easy for people to rush towards a cool goal, but would that scale later? And I think if you look at games that have succeeded, like Rust, they did a great job of being able to scale. So we knew that was very important for us, and it was one of our key pillars, was that the game scales very well. Would the experience get eroded by you progressing too fast or progressing too slow, or one session destroying the whole experience because you're getting stuff too fast? So all of that was really easy to coalesce around this idea of the woodcutting simulator that we worked on initially. And it was that sort of closeout of that period when we confirmed our key assumptions that were our pillars, what we needed to deal with in a survival game. It was a fun process for us to go through, and it sort of, in a sense, foreshadowed the difficulty that was going to come in 2020 for us.